YouTube. I just got a new program and a new mic. Let's break this in. So, recently, Thunderfoot has had a new video, his latest. Thou shalt not be a dumbass. And I liked the video. I have no real problem with it. But one thing I always have a habit of doing is whenever someone wants to talk about science and how great it is, I feel like it needs to also be said that we don't want to commit scientism. So, I put a little comment. Not the most popular comment, but it's true. I'm all for science, but I'm not for scientism. And people say, what the hell is scientism? And let's check it out. 239 replies. Scientism. What the fuck is it? See? Christopher Hitchens' ghost wants to know. I'll show you. It's the belief in the universal applicability. No, I did it. Of the scientific method and approach, and the view that empirical science constitutes the most authoritative worldview or most valuable part of the human learning to the exclusion of other viewpoints. So, specifically, my problem with it comes from this instance right here. To indicate the improper usage of science or scientific claims. Here's a little quote that explains it pretty well. The best way to understand the charge of scientism is as a kind of logical fallacy involving improper usage of science or scientific claims. So basically, when someone says science is the best thing there is and all other viewpoints are nil in comparison, basically what they're saying is an unscientific statement. There's no scientific paper or scientific test that's going to prove that science is the one and only epistemological tool we have. So, because of that, I feel like, well, this needs to be said. It's not scientific. What you're saying is not scientific. Now, philosophers of science have already milled over this. And one in particular, Paul Feyerabend, has a quote here that I think is really interesting. And I'll just read it to you guys. Science can stand on its own feet. It does not need any help from rationalists, secular humanists, or Marxists, and similar religious movements. And non-scientific cultures, procedures, and assumptions can also stand on their own feet and should be allowed to do so. Science must be protected from ideologies, and societies, especially democratic societies, must be protected from science. In a democratic, scientific, in a democracy, scientific institutions, research programs, and suggestions must therefore be subjected to public control. There must be a separation of state and science, just as there is a separation between state and religious institutions. And science should be taught as one view among many, and not as the one and only road to truth and reality. So, this is basically where I agree with Feyerabend in that to say science is the only way to truth and reality is an unscientific statement. That's what makes scientism so bad, and or if it's a better word would be just why it makes it so harmful to science. It's because you're making unscientific claims in the name of science. You're not doing science justice by saying it can do more than what it can, or saying it does, or claiming it says something when it doesn't. That's the problem with it. So I feel that most sophisticated scientists, or just scientists in general, if they understand what scientism is, they don't want to commit it. They'll say, yeah, sure, it's just I put my money where science is, but yeah, sure, if you think something else helps you, go ahead, right? Kind of pragmatic viewpoint. So, on the same Thunderfoot video, I said that. Let's see the comments we got. So, I said, okay, sure, I'll show you guys what scientism is. I put up the basic definition: exaggerated trust in the efficacy of science, basically. belief in the universal applicability. I'm not going to go there again. Of the scientific method and approach. Someone could probably like yell at to me in the comments, "You stupid! That's not how you pronounce it." So, view. And the problem with it is that it's the improper usage of science, right? It's beyond the scope of scientific inquiry. That's all. I'm not saying science is bad, but just like any ideology, whether it be scientism or Christian fundamentalism, there's always going to be people who feel threatened whenever you just say, hey, there are limits to this thing. It's not almighty. It's almost like you went up to a couple of Christians and you told them, hey, God is not almighty. And they'll argue with you to the end of time. So you're going to say, science is not almighty. What do you get? If you're all for science, then you're practicing scientism. Dumbass. Obviously, you didn't read the comment properly. Again, who the fuck endorses that? I agree. I'm not saying that everyone does endorse that, but it's something to be said, and I felt that if I say it, I might get this kind of reaction out of people just to prove a point. I have no problem with that, really. Again, I said why my point was. I just showed you guys why, where I got my definition of scientism. And if you're just saying, oh, this is just some dumb Wikipedia article, yeah. So, yeah, So, yeah, it looks pretty well verified. Every statement has a footnote point. So, I can show you, I just showed you guys. My claim is substantiated, my definition is. I ask people, can you tell me how it's wrong? Okay, so this is a good one, people. And he got a little thumb up for this. Maybe it was himself, who knows? But he says, so you're just stating that you're a religious moron who has a problem with those who trust in science and evidence as opposed to magic and mysticism. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this is called projection. I never made this claim. Someone just they basically throw a bunch of stuff in my mouth and they say, well, that's what he said. Again, this happens when people's ideologies are threatened and they have to resort to such I can't even say it's sophist because that would be meaning it's clever. These kind of pathetic attempts at dismantling other people's argument by just calling them losers or attacking their personality. Classic ad hominem attack. So, I guess, one of the purposes of this video, I should have said it in the beginning. Maybe I'll put it in the description. But one of the purposes of this video is to show that it doesn't matter what ideology you come from. If your ideology is a positive one, well, maybe I shouldn't get into that. But if it's a major ideology and you feel threatened, you will resort to these tactics. No one agrees with your definition. Not even scientism is... You're so witty, Hitchens. Again, trying to label me as a creationist. Oh, check this out. So this guy says, look, I disagree that there is an area beyond scientific inquiry. Only areas in which there has been no scientific inquiry yet. This is the appeal to blind faith. You see, this person is just hoping that sometime in the future, depending on the trends, we say, hey, we're going to know, we're going to get the whole map, and it's going to be the territory of science, everything up and down from atoms to societies and superclusters. I mean, good luck. Just deal with interpersonal relationships. That's hard enough. Science is as far from that as we were, far from knowledge about the sun being the center of the solar system in the year 500. Shit, I'm not even exaggerating. I should say something like 1500 BC or something. That'd be more accurate. I agree with this. And I do trust the peer review method. And you're right, it's not perfect. That's why it doesn't go. You just contradicted yourself, buddy, because the fact that it's not perfect means it doesn't go into every avenue of life. It doesn't fit into every avenue. If it did, science would be perfect. We would be able to be predicting with fundamental physical laws the behaviors of societies and cultures and individual people. That's impossible. Nothing about Newton's third law is going to predict whether or not the stock market's going to crash or boom. These things are fundamental, emergent phenomenon that come out of the interaction of these lower level phenomena such as chemistry, biology, physics. But each one is non-reducible to the other. It just emerges out of the other. But again, I'm going off my point here. I don't know if I should go through all these comments. There's so many of them. Do you know of any method better? Again, I'm not saying there's a better method. I'm just saying everyone's on a kind of a level playing field, and whatever's useful to the person they're going to choose. It's kind of arbitrary. Again, I never said I believe in any supernatural phenomenon. Again, this is just attacking pathetic ways of attacking me. It doesn't make any real sense. At least this person knows that there's some gray areas. That's fine. God of the gaps. Again, I'm not saying God. Again, it's pretty pathetic in my opinion, because it's you just don't know how to approach a person who's not saying that science is bad, but yet calling into question its authoritative power. Just, oh, you must be a religious nut. No, I'm not a religious nut. I'm actually quite skeptical. I'm very secular and I'm very skeptical. And I'm trying to understand how ideologies shape facts and distort reality, or at least shape reality. Yeah? So, all that assisting. I gotta turn down the gain on this mic. You don't understand the terms you're using, are you? Rationality is a concept, not a natural phenomenon. Oh, because I said rationality is comes from the imagination. It's based on a symbol manipulation, kind of like mathematics. So again, so it's as if you say, well, it's almost like if people cannot be certain that their ideology is the absolute right one, that they get uncomfortable. It's like, can't you just sit with the idea that you may be wrong? Probably not, but there's a chance that you will be wrong, or may be wrong or proven wrong in the future. I mean, it's just something to not, you're not trying to have blind faith about anything, but you do have to admit that I may not know it all, and I may be wrong, and I may be proven wrong. But at the same time, still go with your ideology and work with it and not abandon it just because it has some kinks. We're never going to find a perfect ideology. And if anyone can find one, please direct me to it, because I haven't seen it yet. See what else is going on. Well, yeah. genuine factual knowledge, in my opinion, is pragmatic. If it's useful, you use it, and it benefits you, and you call it true. But different people have different needs, and so people will find different things useful. Well, it's a pretty long list, but I showed you some of the points that I want to make here. So, just wanted to talk a little bit. I want to end with talking about one of my the philosophers here that I follow pretty not closely, but I do admire his work. It's Paul Feyerabend. He's a guy. His quote I read before. So this is great. He wrote a book called Against Method, where in the book, the thesis of it was to characterize science as an essentially anarchic enterprise. And he argues that, empathetically, that science merits no exclusive monopoly over dealing in knowledge, quote unquote, and that scientists have never operated within a distinct and narrowly self-defined tradition. He depicts the process of contemporary scientific education as a mild form of indoctrination. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Aimed at, quote, making the history of science duller, simpler, and more uniform, more objective, and more easily accessible to the treatment by strict and unchanging rules. So if you guys ever have a chance to maybe read some of his book or some of his writings, or maybe look up a couple of other YouTube videos about it, he's really interesting. And we always hear about a lot of the popular philosophers of science, just like Popper and Kuhn. You think of Popper and what? Kuhn. But not much is said about Feyerabend. And there's a great diagram here I want to show you guys. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Should have had this handy. Huh. Well, that's a bummer. Can't seem to find it right away. Oh well. So, it was just a diagram I was going to show you guys to kind of put into a picture the idea of what I'm talking about here, at least what he was talking about. But as you can see, it's him right there. And that there's no his theory draws on the observation that there's no identifiable fixed scientific method that is consistent with the practices of the paradigm of scientific progress, scientific revolution. It's a radical critique of rationalist and empiricist historiography. Is it? Now I really want to find it because it's such a. I found it. Now I feel awesome. Okay, so this is basically the the three most, in my opinion, the three most fundamental views in the philosophy of science. By the way, why am I talking about the philosophy of science? Because philosophers of science talk about what science is supposed to be doing, what it means, and what it means to find knowledge in science and how to put it into a perspective. So Popper, who's probably the most famous philosopher of science, and where I believe maybe a good 60 to 70% of scientists believe in, is that each theory builds progressively on theories preceding it. So we have these concentric circles where theories grow on top of each other and they add to each other, and it's basically all the same, just more specific, more ever more knowledge, ever more variations, and you're basically a process of unfolding and identifying more and more of something. Cone, which I would say maybe between 40 and 30% of scientists, maybe the one is a little more hipper, 25%, are into this idea of paradigms, where Popper talked about just a gradual building up of knowledge. Kuhn instead talked about that we understand knowledge depending on our paradigms, and so we move from one paradigm to the other, and each paradigm shapes the way we can identify the knowledge within the paradigm. And what makes paradigms change is when we gather enough facts which don't fit in the paradigm, i.e. anomalous activities or anomalous data, right? Stuff that doesn't fit with the model. When you get enough of these, paradigms change. Now, Feyerabend, I would say maybe he's like less than 5%. Maybe we'll be realistic, probably less than 1% of scientists who have subscribed to this notion. But I would say I'm a scientist who subscribes to this notion. Is that hold on a second, everyone. This has vocals in it, so I just want to. There it goes, more vocals. Sorry about this. We gotta make sure there's not a lot of vocals, everyone. There we go. Okay. Where were we? There we are. Okay, so Feyerabend talked about having theories that have really nothing to do with each other, and they may overlap. So basically, each time you create a theory. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry, I had to come back. Alright, so every time you create a theory, this theory is essentially a new way of looking at reality. And sometimes two theories may share something about how they approach reality, but other times theories may have nothing to do with each other. And so each theory may reveal something new or different about reality. And this, to me, I feel is probably the most libertarian idea of science. I mean, with a name like epistemological anarchism, you really can't think otherwise. So let's just talk about this real quick. The use of the term anarchism in the name reflected a kind of methodological pluralism. So this means that when you look at methods to understand reality, you're plural about it, meaning you allow for different methods and you don't tout one over the other. You just use the one that's most useful for yourself. So the scientific method does not have a monopoly on truth or useful results. Maybe an anything goes attitude, right? So Feyerabend felt that science started as a liberating movement, but over time it became increasingly dogmatic and rigid, and therefore had become increasingly an ideology. And despite its success, science had started to attain some oppressive features, and it was not possible to come up with an unambiguous way to distinguish science from religion, magic, or mythology. I may disagree a little bit about that in the sense that, I mean, I see what he's saying. I see in the basis. He's not saying that science is the same thing as religion or magic. but that some of its oppressive features may be similar to religion or magic or mythology. So he's not saying that science is myth. He felt the exclusive dominance of science as a means of directing society was authoritarian and ungrounded. Proclamation of the theory earned Farabian the title of, quote, the worst enemy of science from his detractors. Of course, he never said anything against science. He just said it's not the one and only. It's just like I said, you're going up to a Christian, you're saying, hey, your God is not almighty. People will react and they'll get mad. Whenever you challenge someone's ingrained, unquestioned ideology, they're going to attack you, especially with very ridiculous and pathetic fallacy-laden arguments. So, I think I talked enough for now. So, I'll just end this video right here. Thanks for listening. Hope it wasn't too wayward for you all. Have a good one.